Good morning. How are you? Actually, I guess it's not morning anymore. It's kind of afternoon, isn't it? But it's always morning time. It's always good morning. Like my good friend Brad Lee says, there's no such thing as a bad day. If you're alive, if your eyeballs open up in the morning, it's a good day. The only time it's a bad day is when your eyes don't open and they put you 6 feet under. Hey, I want to share with you today what I'm doing. See, I'm in my car here, and I'm driving to the GMC AutoNation truck dealership because I want to go look at a new truck. Now, you guys know I have a Tundra. Absolutely, I really like that truck. It's a great truck. I've had it now 9 years and just had to do a little bit of maintenance on it last week. So first time I've had to do really anything on it other than some light bulbs and oil changes. So it's been a great truck. The problem is it's a gas engine. I really want a diesel. And the reason I want a diesel is I got a big motorcycle trailer. It'd be nice to be able to have some more power. It does all right, but you know, it gets 5 miles to a gallon. So I want a big diesel, and I really like that new Chevy diesel and GMC. And since Tundra, Toyota is not coming out with a diesel anytime soon, I figured, you know what, I'm gonna go look at a truck. Now, why do I want to look at a new truck? A truck like what Katrina Mills, my cousin Katrina from Idaho, her husband Sam's got one. So I'm gonna go look at a 4-door Duramax. But why? Well, I posted earlier this morning that a lot of business owners will drive new trucks. They'll buy a new truck every year. And when I had my construction company, I bought a brand new truck every single year. I bought a couple of them. And I bought a brand new SUV every 2 years for the family through the business. So if you have neighbors that are business owners and you see that they're always driving new Range Rovers or Lexuses or Mercedes or new Cadillacs, there's an actual reason these business owners are driving these new cars and trucks every year. And that's because of what some people would want to call a loophole. And I hate that word. It's so inaccurate. And what I mean by that is there's no such thing as a loophole. And there's a little bus there behind me. There's no such thing as a tax loophole, but that's what a lot of people, uneducated people, call as loopholes. And so there is a code, part of the IRS code on Section 179. Rob says, what about Duramax? Oh, you want a Duramax? Yeah, that's what I'm going to get. Maybe. I'm going to go down and look at it. But Section 179, and what Section 179 allows you to do, unlike regular depreciation on vehicles, is Section 179 allows you to write off 100% of the purchase price immediately, not over a 5-year period, like a lot of other things where you got to depreciate them over 3 to 5 years. Section 179 lets you do it all at once. So if I go down here and I look at this GMC Duramax, I'm assuming they're going to be about 60 grand, fully loaded, get a lift kit on it, get some big tires and wheels on it, get a tonneau cover, make sure it's got heated seats if it doesn't. So there's some things that I want in there, right? So let's say it cost me $65,000. Now, I could do the standard thing and buy that and then just write off the mileage. But because I have 5 other vehicles, I really don't drive them that much. So writing off the miles is not really an option for me and you have to extend that out. So you can only write off the miles when that happens. Section 179 allows you to write it off immediately. All right, so you don't have to wait 2 years or 3 years. You can immediately write it off. So I want to look at it, and what Section 179 allows you to do is you can write off up to $500,000. Now, it used to be $1 million, now it's up to $500,000. So but I need to throw this out there because I forgot to do it earlier. Just in case you don't know, I'm not a tax attorney. I'm not a tax professional. This should not be considered as tax or legal advice. You need to talk to a professional. I am simply an entrepreneur that runs a several multi-million dollar companies, and I'm just simply applying what my tax professional and my tax attorney advises me to do. So now that that's out of the way, I should have done that in the beginning, but I was too excited. I've been up in Tahoe all week driving my Tundra, and now I'm in my little shiny race car. But I digress. Back to the truck thing. Why you should be driving an SUV or why you should be driving a new truck every year or two. So if I buy this truck and it's $65,000, now I could buy it the traditional way. I could lease it and write off the payment every month. That's one way to do it. But I really don't like leases. It's the most expensive way to buy a car. So I like the truck because on a lease, you can't customize it. You know, if you were just going to get a vehicle to go from point A to point B, a lease is fine. But like I said, I want to put a lift kit on the truck. I want to put a tonneau cover in there. I want to put some different wheels on it. I want to put a chip on the engine so it's a little bit faster, more horsepower. And a lease, you can do that, but you got to convert it back to the original way when you leased it, even though it would make it less desirable of a vehicle. So I don't want to lease. So I want to buy. Now, if you buy right, you literally can buy a vehicle every year and not lose a lot of money on it. You know, my Tundra, I paid $53,000 for it 9 years ago, and they offered me $35,000 on it for a trade. So I could probably sell it for around $40,000. So I've driven that Tundra for 9 years for what? $13,000, right? So it's not a lot. So if you buy it right, and what I mean by buy it right is if you watch any of my other videos, you'll hear me talking about how this car that I'm driving right now, I saved $17,000 because I bought it through my Montana LLC and I didn't have to pay Nevada state sales tax. I didn't have to pay registration fees. It was $100 for a lifetime license plate. And so that's what I mean by buying it right, is you buy the right vehicle at the right price, and then you do the things the right way so you don't have to lose your money in sales tax. Because when you drive off that lot, your vehicle's already worth less, right? And you just lost 7.5% to 8% in sales tax. And then you got the registration fees on top of it. So you got to buy it right. Now, if you buy it right, you should be able to buy a vehicle every 1 to 2 years and get out of it as long as you don't beat it up and abuse it and put a bunch of miles on it. So you can write it off by either leasing it, you can write it off any vehicle with the mileage, or you can Section 179 it, and that's what I want to talk about today, is Section 179. Section 179 allows you to write it off immediately that day. So if I buy a truck today, which I'm not going to, but if I did, and it was $65,000, I could literally write off $65,000 of my business income. So that means I'm not going to pay tax on $65,000 because I bought a brand new truck. That's a big savings when you're in a 50% tax bracket. I was talking to someone this morning, and I told him I'm in a 3% tax bracket. Maybe 3%. I don't even know if it's that high. And he's like, well, how do you make all that money and not pay taxes? Because I understand the tax code, and one of the tax codes that I use is Section 179. So if I don't have to pay tax on that $65,000, I could afford to lose $5,000-$6,000 if I buy a new truck every year. If I buy a new luxury Range Rover every year or a new Cadillac every year. So there's some qualifications that you need to know about for Section 179. That is, it must have a GVWR, gross vehicle weight ratio or record of 6,000 pounds or more, which is why all these big luxury SUVs, including Tesla, all have 6,000 GVWR ratings on them. It's because you can Section 179 it. So you can literally go into Tesla, buy an X for I don't know, what are they, 100 grand? And because it's over 6,000 GVWR, you can actually write off that entire $100,000 that day. Think about that. That day, you write off 100 grand. Now, you keep the car for a year, you flip it, as in sell it, and you buy another Tesla. And I'm driving by here, a Tesla, the very first dealership Tesla's got's right there. Usually it's in a mall or stuff, but there's actually a Tesla dealership right there with a bunch of those Model X's. But you can write it off right then and there, which could help you with your tax burden, because that's 100 grand you're not paying taxes on. Now, let's talk about this. That's $100,000 though that you're now in debt. And if you listen to Dave Ramsey, or what else is that? What's that other girl's? Man, I forgot her name right now. The girl on TV, Susie Orman. They'll tell you to stay away from debt. But if you can go into debt for 100 grand to save $50,000 in taxes, is it not worth it? And then next year buy a new vehicle. So you're literally driving a brand new vehicle every year so you don't have to pay income tax. Now, why does the government do that? It's because it's called the economy. They want to pump up the economy by encouraging you to go into debt. But here's the thing. If you got great credit, you can actually get a loan on pretty much any vehicle and not pay interest on it. So yeah, you got $100,000 of debt. Maybe it's with Tesla, maybe it's GMC, at 0% interest. So yes, you have a payment, and you could pay cash and drive your vehicle without paying interest, but you don't necessarily get the tax write-off. Now, not saying that you can't. You could get a tax write-off if you bought a used vehicle and you wrote off the mileage, but you got to actually spend the money to get that write-off. Where with this strategy, if you Section 179 it, you actually get the write-off immediately, and you don't have to wait until you spend the money on either gas, maintenance, taxes, all that stuff. And speaking of trucks, I'm here at the GMC dealership. Oh, damn it, I always forget that. Sorry. Stupid Ferrari. Always starts beeping when I take off my seatbelt if the engine's still going. And the engine's always going because it's hot as hell here in Las Vegas. It's 99 degrees. No, it's now 100 degrees here in Vegas. So you got to keep the engine running for the AC. But on the Section 179, you can write that off immediately. So if you buy a $65,000 Duramax, or if you buy a $100,000 Tesla X, you can write it off right now. There's some other vehicles. Let me show you. I'm going to flip the camera around, and I'm going to answer some questions now that I've actually pulled over. So here I'm at the GMC dealership, the Buick. See that Dodge right there? Right there, right? And then there's a GMC right behind it to the right of that Dodge. I guarantee if I open up that door, it's going to say GVWR, or maybe it's GWVR, whatever. GV, I think it's gross vehicle weight ratio, or gross weight vehicle, whatever. 6,000 pounds. I guarantee that those are going to be 6,000 pounds, which means you can Section 179 them. Versus this little Buick sitting right there, you could not Section 179 that first Buick. The SUV right behind it definitely could Section 179 it. So you can't do that one, but that one right there you could. And the black Duramax truck behind it, you could Section 179 it. So this allows you to make that write-off today. So you spend 50 grand, 60, $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 on these vehicles, and you can Section 179 them. Someone just asked if you could do it on a boat. It depends if you can do it on a boat or not. If you had a business that uses the boat to make money, Say you have a fishing business, you have a ferry business. You know, I know a guy that lives in Tahoe that's got this, I don't know, 120,000 ton ferry. It's a huge, huge boat that like 200 people can get on it, full restaurant, bar, all that stuff. So could you section 179 that? Yeah, you could section 179 a boat if it's used for business, but it has to be used for a business. Could it be a ferry business? That's right. Except for ferry, F-E-R-R-Y. Thank you, Lawson Henry. GVWR, gross vehicle weight rating. Thank you so much. Yes, you would open up an LLC to do that. You have to have an LLC or a corporation to do that. Robert says, what about an existing vehicle that you owed but converted it to a work vehicle? I would talk to your tax professional on that. The Section 179 it was pertaining to brand new vehicles, but recently I heard that Trump had changed that to used vehicles. Again, I'm not a tax professional. I'm just sharing with you what my guy tells me to do, which is buy a new vehicle every year. I just haven't been doing it because I was happy with the truck and I have other write-offs. So you might be able to do it with a business. You know, for example, the car that I'm sitting in right now, the business pays for it. I do get a tax deduction for this Ferrari, but not Section 179. I can only write off miles, actual costs, and I got to depreciate it over 3 to 5 years. I can't Section 179 the Ferrari, but I can that Duramax sitting over there. Let me get to some other questions here. Let's see what the rest of that. Yep, that's it. Ferry, F-E-R-R, 6,000 pounds. Yeah, this applies with new businesses. So, Antra? Sorry if I butchered that wrong. I think it's Antra. Yeah, this is new businesses as well as established businesses. This applies to airplanes as well. It applies to computers. So recently I bought 18, 22 new iMacs. If you come to my office, it's all Macintosh 21-inch to 27-inch iMacs everywhere throughout the office because I don't want to pay someone to do tech support, and with Apple, I don't have to worry about tech support. I Section 179 all those computers versus depreciating them over 3 to 5 years. I simply Section 179, which means I get to write it off right now. All right. So it's not just vehicles, but a lot of people just know about with vehicles. Don't you have to keep it for a certain amount of time if 179? Kevin, I don't think so, Kevin. I've never heard of that. But you know, the tax code is 40,000 pages and it is constantly changing. But I used to buy several brand new pickups every single year when I owned my construction company. So I do not think that there's any requirement on how long you got to keep. I've never heard of that. There is a caveat to this, and that is if you Section 179 something. So if I bought a new truck and I wrote off $65,000, and let's say I sold it in a year and I traded in for 50, I don't get to write off that loss because I got to write it off immediately. But because I sold it for 50 and I wrote off 65 the year before, I now have to reclaim that and put that on my taxes. But if I buy another vehicle, it just rolls that. It basically goes away. It's a wash. So I don't think there's a requirement of how long you got to keep it. Again, talk to your tax professional on that. You buy a write-off with 0% financing. That's right. Jeremy Rubin, you and I need to talk, brother, about flipping. I talked to an investor today that he does quite a bit of flips, but he's paying self-employment tax, workman's comp, unemployment tax, federal tax, state tax. So he's flipping properties like you do, Jeremy. If you guys don't know, Jeremy Rubin is the friendly flipper. He's extremely successful at flipping properties. But Jeremy, you and I need to talk to see if you're doing that through your Roth IRA or if you're simply paying 50% taxes on every dime you make. So, I mean, you got to work 3 times harder if you're not doing it through your Roth IRA. So we'll talk about that. Assam, you say, is it good to buy a 2019 RV? I don't know. I don't know if it's good or not. I bought an RV. I did not, I don't think I Section 179 that one. I don't think that actually qualified. It was over the $500,000. So, but I write it off. I write it off every month. I write off the actual interest on it. You can't write off principal. I don't drive it enough to write off the mileage, so I write off the actual payments, the oil, the gas, and the interest that I pay on that loan, which is not very much, but still it's a write-off. Lawson Henry says, does the company that the car is registered under have to have cash flow to write off? That's a great question, Lawson. Thank you so much. And I sincerely mean that. Here's the beautiful thing with write-offs and having multiple LLCs and multiple corporations is it's called pass-through. So you can pass the loss of your LLC to your personal income tax. So for example, let's say you're a W-2 employee. You're a firefighter. You're a school teacher. You work at the sawmill. Or you work here at the GMC AutoNation dealership and you get a W-2. If you have an LLC or an S-Corp and that LLC has losses because you just bought a brand new Tesla or a new Cadillac or a new Tundra or a new GMC where I'm at, that loss can go against your personal income. So if you made $100,000 last year selling cars at GMC and you bought a new Duramax under your LLC at $65,000, you now get a $65,000 write-off that flows to the $100,000 W-2 income. So now you're only paying taxes on $35,000. And if you're married, you get a standard deduction of $24,000. So now you only have a tax burden, or you only made $11,000 to pay taxes on. So to answer that question, Lawson, yes, that's the idea, is you write off things through your LLC, whether it's profitable or not, doesn't matter if you can write it off. Now, can you do that forever? The tax code does say that the IRS can disqualify your write-offs if you have not made a profit in 3 years, and you can't just make it a hobby. So I had a friend that had a cattle business, and it ended up costing him a couple $100,000 because he wasn't running it as a real business. It wasn't incorporated. He doesn't have an LLC. He didn't have a website. He was paying taxes on the cattle that he sold, but he was kind of running as a hobby, and that's what the IRS determined was it was a hobby. So it cost him a couple $100,000 because all those years that he'd been writing it off, he ended up having to pay taxes on it. So it can't be a hobby. It's got to be a real business, but it doesn't have to be profitable. You ever heard of a company called Uber? I know you have. Uber's not a profitable company. Amazon wasn't profitable for their first 12 years. Tesla is not a profitable company. Do you think the IRS lets them write things off? Of course. Of course they do. Why do they allow Tesla to write off and Uber to write off and Amazon to write things off? Look at Kmart. Is Kmart profitable? No. That's why they're closing down stores. Is Sears profitable? No. But they're not disqualified. So the code says you got to make money within 3 years. I believe that's what it says, is 3 years. But that doesn't mean you're automatically disqualified. That just means you got to attempt to make money. And Amazon attempted to make money for 12 years before they broke even. Look at Zappos. They didn't make money. You know, eventually they are, and so they don't just automatically disqualify you. So don't believe that myth that you have to make money to write things off. All right, I'm going to see if I got to these questions. Katrina says you're a Dodge. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that, Katrina, if you're still on here. My cousin Katrina's husband has a Dodge. It's my other cousin that always hangs out with them that has the Duramax with no catalytic converters in it. That's Freddie. I think you can. Justin earlier said he thinks the new tax code allows you to write off used vehicles. I think you actually can. But check with your professional on that. Remember, if you write it off and then you sell it later, like a lot of my friends in exotic car hacks do, they buy luxury vehicles and they make money on it. If you make money, you got to pay taxes on that. I mean, it's only fair, right? If you're making money on these cars, you got to pay taxes. Let me see what else I got here. Someone says, could I open an LLC? Yes, that's what you want to do. Can people tax deduct a repo? I don't know what that means. Can they tax deduct a repo? Like, if you bought a repo? I'm not sure what that one means. Then registered in Montana? Absolutely. Yeah, Kevin said you can Section 179 every year. You can Section 179 every day. You can buy stuff. I buy stuff all the time for my office, for my company. Does a car have to be registered under a business? No, it doesn't have to be registered under a business. Many times people don't have business credit, so they can't get financing under the business. So they simply get financing under their personal name, and that's fine. You just got to do a resolution under your corporate minutes to purchase a vehicle. But no, it doesn't have to be registered under a business. Now, the Ferrari I'm sitting in, that is registered under a business because I didn't want to pay sales tax, so it's a Montana LLC that actually owns this car. And then one of my other companies, actually a C Corp, pays for marketing on the outside of the car, which you can't see from the inside, but there is marketing materials on the outside of the car that divorceyourdebt.com advertises on the Ferrari divorceyourdebt.com's website. So DYD pays the Ferrari LLC for marketing, and then the Ferrari LLC is allowed to write off mileage, payments, interest, and all that stuff. So I write off, I can't Section 179 it, so I actually write off the expenses because I don't put enough miles on the car. This car's got almost 17,000 miles. I put 940 on it so far. So obviously the mileage thing would not work, so I write off the interest instead, and oil changes and maintenance and all that stuff. Matt Monero, the #1 business financing guy on the planet, says works beautifully for trucking customers and towing clients that he finances. That's right. It does. It works for trucks. It works for cars. Works for tow trucks. All that stuff. Thanks, Matt. Jeremy says when you sell one. Yes. So I answered that earlier. That when you sell that vehicle, you have to. It's reclaim taxes, reclaimation of taxes, or something. So yeah, you got to put that on the tax return. But as long as you buy another vehicle, it goes away. It's a wash. Let's see if. Yes, we're going to talk. I'm just looking through this. I have a new LLC and I PG'd for the vehicle. Oh, you're asking if you have a new LLC, do you have the PJ for the vehicle? I think that's what you're asking. Yes. If it's a brand new LLC and you don't have business credit, most likely you're going to have the PG for the vehicle. I talked to a gentleman this morning that had just bought an airplane, and he essentially paid cash. We were talking about taxes because he bought this airplane, and his business partner said, no, we don't have to pay sales tax because he bought it in Indiana and he flew it to Pennsylvania. And I was like, Pennsylvania is going to come after you, bro. So you need to get that registered under an LLC in Montana, because you're going to pay $7-8 grand in sales tax. So it's worth the $1,800 to set up the LLC to save $7 grand, right? And then there's also personal property tax that you have to pay on airplanes every single year. So it's down the road. And then when you go to sell the airplane or the vehicle, you sell the LLC, not the vehicle, so the person buying it doesn't have to pay sales tax either. So when you have a brand new company or brand new LLC, most likely you are going to have to PG, which means personally guarantee the loan, and that is common. It's no big deal. With our business credit program, we teach people how to get lines of credit, car loans, motorcycle loans, airplanes, boats, bank loans without PG in it. But sometimes to get started, you have to PG. For example, if your business is less than 3 years old and you go to Office Depot or Staples or Costco or Sam's Club, you're going to have to PG that corporate credit card because it's less than 3 years old. So don't go bankrupt over a $5 ream of paper, right? PG it so it shows up on your credit report, your business credit report. See if I get through all these questions. Oop, there's one. Hold on. When I get my money, when you get your money, you're going to Section 179 it. Wouldn't that be great if you could Section 179 your income? That would be great. All right, Corey Peterson, I see you're watching. I know you Section 179, that big, beautiful beast you're driving. I think it's like if I remember right, I saw it that one night with Kahuna Wealth Builders on the side of it, Corey, and I think it was a Ford 350. If I remember, it was a Ford 150. Maybe it was a Chevy. It was late at night. Sold one of my mowers for cash. Do I have to pay taxes on it? I am not a tax professional, so I'm not going to give you tax or legal advice, Nick. I would say talk to your tax professional on that. I know the answer to that question, but I can't legally answer that. Call me, Nick. Call me, and I'll answer that question, but I'm not going to do it here on Facebook since you sold it for cash. I think that's everybody. Is there any other questions? Yes. So that's a Ford 350, Corey. Yeah, that's okay. Beautiful truck. Big, beautiful, loud diesel. I keep saying PG, a personal guarantee. Corey, you did not Section 179. Corey, Section 179 is like cost segregation depreciation on your apartment complexes. You write it off immediately when you cost segregate versus over 25 years, or I think the new tax code says 20. So that's all Section 179 is, Corey, is you're cost segregating it. If you guys don't know what cost segregation is or who Corey Peterson is the founder of Kahuna Wealth Builder. He's the big kahuna. He teaches people how to buy apartment complexes with horrible credit and no money down. Corey's my business partner in the apartment complex business that you guys have heard me talk about. My wife just says, can you write off a luxury bike? Of course you can. She knows better. Yes, you can write off a bike, but you can't Section 179 it, which is what we're talking about today. But Corey, on your 350, you can definitely 179 that baby. For sure. Lawson, Mooney, M20J. That's awesome. Oh, is that what you meant? I thought it said money. You said that you're going to Section 179 your Mooney. Absolutely. You can Section 179 that. Do you guys wonder why Grant Cardone bought that G6 in December, even though he didn't get it for several months? Did you know You ever think about, Grant, like, why would you buy a $54 million plane in December but not take ownership for 3-4 months and fly commercial because he sold his G1? It's taxes. If you bought it in December, he could write off all of that in December, the day he bought that plane. And he didn't Section 179 it, but there's a different code for airplanes that are over $1 million. All right, looks like I answered all of you guys' questions. I'm gonna go look at some trucks. Rob, you say tax write-off. I'm not sure what that means. It's all tax write-off, baby. And there it is again. I'm gonna turn off the car this time though. And then it always beeps like that. Tons of beeping. My wife hates it when she gets in here. She's got super sensitive cat-like dog hearing, and that beeping drives her crazy. But anyway, all right, I'm gonna run. Hope you guys enjoyed today's educational video, not tax or legal advice, but strictly educational, and you can use that education to save money. Because remember, it's not how much money you make that determines if you're financially free. It's how much money you keep. I have friends that don't make very much money that are financially free at less than 50 grand a year of income. I have friends that make I have a friend makes $50 million a year and he's broke. So it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. So make sure you keep more of your money. See you later.